Hello there everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of 2021's The In Out Crowd. We are still staying in, but of course, as always, we are very much out. I myself have been out and about a little bit more recently with the lockdown changes being in place. We can now go, as opposed to the Tesco at the end of the road, we can go to Tesco in Aberdeen if we want. So there we go, that's something to look forward to this summer. Hopefully we've all been out enjoying the weather, and even though we've maybe not got our hot pants and glitter on for a Pride March just yet, I'm sure that when the time comes we will all be totally relishing the opportunity, because rain or shine, there's absolutely no hiding our rainbow fabulousness. Talking of rain or shine, I can think of no better way to kick off tonight's summery edition of the In Out Crowd with some weather. Girl. It's raining. So, first up tonight on our weather news report is that there are some stormy skies up in the clouds, and that is due to the government's LGBT plus advisory panel being disbanded. The government's LGBT advisory panel has been disbanded after 3 members quit last month. This was from a report done by our good pals, the BBC. The panel was set up as part of an LGBT plus action plan established under our other very good pal, Theresa May. It was to advise ministers on issues and policies concerning lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people. However, the 3 advisors quit last month over the government's handling of LGBT rights amid claims it was dragging its feet on a pledge to ban so-called conversion therapy, which of course is something we have talked about extensively here on the In Out Crowd. I nearly went to move my wee glasses there. She said it was such a shame that Miss Truss was disbanding the advisory panel, Liz Truss being the Equalities Minister at the moment. In the letter seen by the BBC, Liz Truss says, "I will also be shortly making an announcement concerning the International LGBT Conference and convening a new body that will take international LGBT rights forward." Of course, us here at the In Out Crowd and Shaper Caper hope that this is something that the government puts as a priority, because as we know, LGBTQ plus rights are not only essential, but particularly moving forward, they have absolutely got to be at the forefront of all of our minds, whether we are part of the community or allies. Moving on, we have got some sunny skies coming up, and that is due to a small victory in transgender rights being moved forward in this country. The cost of changing our legal gender, should we need to do so, is cut now to less than £10. The BBC's reported that the £140 fee to apply for gender, they call it recognition certificates, will be cut to single figures from next month, according to government sources. The ministers pledged in September to slash the cost of legally changing gender after deciding against wider reforms. Of course, I would argue that changing gender, that's actually quite difficult to say, changing gender vocabulary as opposed to affirming gender or gender recognition, as we've just mentioned. The government said it is working at speed to make the process more straightforward, a spokesman said. And this is after a consultation was set up in 2018 to explore potential reforms to the way that trans people can apply for a gender recognition certificate in England and Wales. This allows someone's acquired gender to be recorded on their birth and marriage certificates. So whilst it's a small step forward, I'm sure we can all, especially in post-lockdown era, or at the current post-lockdown era, that the change between £140 to £10 is absolutely massive. And that is especially important considering that can be such a small change for society in general, but an absolute massive shift forward in the confidence and mental health and well-being of our trans brothers, sisters and other gendered siblings. Now, finally, we're going to be looking at some rising stars in our queer community, not necessarily here in the Scotland/UK that we're in, but actually slightly further overseas with someone in Germany. We are going to be joined tonight by the fabulous Daniel Hines, like the ketchup, hence how I got that name correct the first time, where we're going to be chatting a little bit about his work as a queer gaming educator, how he's helping this company that he works with make games for young people to understand more about queer health and education. And we also have a wee cheeky look at a kissing simulator between me and Daniel. Consensual, of course. We do hope you enjoy. It's over to me and Daniel Hines. Also, have a wee look and see if you can spot which fabulous cartoon character appears on my little water sippy cup, who I think you'll agree is the original queer icon. Drink. Hydration is key. Righty-ho. So I'm incredibly pleased to introduce our guest for this evening. It is the fabulous Daniel Hines. Is that how you say it? Yes, Hines.
Heinz, yes.
Hines, lovely. Like the ketchup. I know
Like
the ketchup.
ketchup.
So I'm good with that.
That one when I grew up.
So if anyone's not sure who you are, can you give us just a quick introduction to who Daniel Hines is and what you're all about?
Yes, hello everyone. It is lovely meeting you digitally in this pandemic times. My name is Daniel Heinz. I live and work in Berlin. I'm an activist here engaged in migrant politics and also LGBT issues, and I work as a trainer in the field of civic education.
Fabulous, yeah. So touching first then on your activism and your civic education, as you'd mentioned, is there a particular group that you kind of work with and engage with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are two fields. Firstly, about the education and training. I'm working with young children from the age range of 12 to 18, which wouldn't be a child anymore, but a young teenager or young adult. And I've just recently professionalized myself as a trainer in the field of video games. So I do video game training with young students to sensitize them with gender issues or about gender issues, and to talk with them about topics like consent or LGBT identities, gender diversity, and so on. And I use very cool video games in order to show them how stuff like this could work.
That sounds amazing, yeah. And I think that's very much a kind of world away from what I had experienced when I was a young person. Was it the same for you as well?
Totally. In regards to the video games,
Mm-hmm.
I was totally into video games. I can remember very vividly that I always wanted to be like these cool female characters. I just loved them. Now thinking back to characters, it's actually pretty interesting because a lot of the games back in the days didn't have any kind of representation when it comes to LGBT character design. This changed actually very rapidly over the last years. You now have in huge games like The Witcher, for example, like this mainstream video games that have very high sellings, LGBT options in terms of love romances and so on. All of a sudden, if you click the right buttons, you can have a gay hookup, for example. So there's some movement within the developer world, but if we look more deeper in the topic, there's still a lot to do.
As with most things, I think there's still so much that we need to do. How do you find the young people that you work with? What's their response to using video games to explore those kind of discussions?
Mm-hmm. This is actually pretty cool because when I started doing workshops on video games, this just happened after the pandemic, because usually I would go to the school and make workshops with them. Before the pandemic, we did a lot of work about coming out processes and about racism and so on. But after the pandemic hit in, we had to change our concepts, and we were, okay, how can we meet actually in like a digital room? So we were using, for example, Minecraft, which is a video game that a lot of students like. And we could meet there all together. The students would need to download the game. However, this isn't a problem. We thought that young students would freak out about it, but in fact, it's pretty easy for them, even more easy than it's for us, probably because it's a different generation, and we would speak with TeamSpeak or other platforms and just talk about issues that they face, because in fact, every second household in Germany, for example, has a video game console. So speaking about a PlayStation or an Xbox, and even more so do have like smartphones, and smartphones are basically also full of video games. So it's very close to their relationship of everyday life. What we were more concerned about was the issue of like sexuality and gender, like how they would take this as a topic of discussion, but we were also surprised there, because I would usually do the workshop with a second teamer. So I'm talking about the we, and they were actually very sensitive towards these topics already. And I was surprised because the females, for example, or the people that would classify as female at the moment, they were very aware about the fact that female characters are usually over-sexualized, and they were very, very aware of the fact that there's not a lot of body diversity when it comes to characters. You know, you would usually have like very ripped male characters and very slim female characters with proportions that are not realistic. And this is from their lived reality, and there is the opportunity for us to talk about these issues and to give them fun facts, for example, because nothing is for no reason. In the 19th, the game developers who would develop the most realistic breast jiggling effects would be the ones who were paid the most. So this is something super interesting that not a lot of people think about. Or something else, in the physical room, we have physical rules. If I drop my mobile phone, it falls. And in the digital room, it's super interesting. Till the 2000s, 2010s, only female characters would have jiggling effects when it comes to like skins or breasts mechanics, but male characters wouldn't. And this is something really interesting to think about, that you can talk about with young students also.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. Now you're pointing it out. Yeah, all the games I played when I was younger, you wouldn't see any movement of, like, as you're saying about skin kind of movement on the male characters. It's only when you point these kind of things out, you go, oh wow, yeah, there is that. It's very new, a lot of these kind of changes. As well as working with lots of young people, you had also mentioned in a wee conversation that we had about working with Eastern European folks that are seeking asylum. Do you want to maybe talk to us a little bit about that and what that involves?
Sure. So my parents are actually from the Soviet Union, or what was used to be as the Soviet Union. We migrated from Kazakhstan to Germany. So I have the privilege to live in Germany and not in Russia or Ukraine or so, where my grandparents are from originally. And I engaged in a organization here in Berlin, which is called Kvartiera, which is a Russian term for, like a quartier. Is it also English? Like a living room?
Yeah.
And they're engaged in helping people from Eastern Europe, so from Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and so on, to get to Germany, because the situation over there for LGBT people is not very nice, to be polite in terms of classification. And this is where the problem kicks in, because sexuality or sexual harassment or harassment based on your chosen gender identity is within the European Union not a reason to apply for asylum. The Convention on Asylum was ratified during the 50s, the end of the 50s in the European Union. And back then, people didn't think about sexuality as a reason or gender identity as a reason to leave the country. Therefore, most of the countries within Europe do not have a legislation that applies to, for example, transgender folk or gay people, because, yeah, it's nothing they thought about, actually. And it's really hard in Germany, for example. We have annually more than 200 cases alone from Eastern Europe about people who are gay, who are trans, who are non-binary, and so on and so forth, who would like to leave their home country because they cannot live there, because they have a realistic fear of being threatened and even losing their life. And what happens if they apply is that, for example, German administration says, we do not believe you that you're gay, or we do not believe you that you're non-binary, or that you're trans, or that you're bisexual or lesbian. You need to prove it to us. And that's where the problem kicks in, because how do you prove that you're actually trans? How do you prove that you're gay? And most of these people have lived or do live in the closet, which means that they do not look how a gay person is imagined in Germany. Yeah. And that's also a question, like, how do you imagine a gay person? It's so, like, it doesn't make sense. And furthermore, because, and this is really annoying me, Germany is presenting itself as like this progressive country with a lot of freedom, the country which tries to fight homo and transphobia. But in the end, when it comes to LGBT folks outside of Germany, Germany is the same shitty country with everything else.
Yeah, you can say that. Listen, if it's the truth, you can say it completely. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of smirking there, not at the situation you were describing, but just the thought of, how do you prove you're bisexual? How do you prove that you're trans? It just seems so unusual that that's still happening in this day and age.
You know, this is really crazy, because there were a lot of cases that were reported in Hamburg, which is a city in North Germany, for example. So this person, it's so crazy, and trigger warning, it's not nice. He had to watch gay porn while the police officers were watching if he was getting an erection or not. And methods like these were applied in 2016 in a case where someone applied for asylum in order to prove that he's really gay. And you can imagine such a humiliating situation, really not good.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is that hopefully with the work that you are doing with young people in Germany and other organisations and companies like what you're doing, we'll hopefully see a shift in that at some point in our lifetimes. That would be really great. And talking about that, we have got a wee bit of a treat, and we're going to actually play one of the games that Daniel has recommended for us.
So this is the realistic kissing simulator. It's a little gimmick game programmed by Jimmy Andrews and Lauren Schmidt. It's an indie game, and we use the realistic kissing simulator in order to educate students and young children about consent. And it's a 2-player game. So it's monogamous, unfortunately, at the moment. Maybe in the future people could like join. So what's happening is we have to simultaneously press up and down in order to express our consent. So both people agree and shake hands, we can progress with the game. Someone has to invite the other person for a kiss by pressing both buttons down. So I'm asking now, would you like to kiss me? And you have,
Oh,
and
sorry.
have to keep the buttons pressed, because every hesitation of or second thoughts would be considered in this game to not consensual. So it's a very strict definition of what's consensual and what's not. So now we agreed to perform kissing, and now we can.
I'm holding. Oh my gosh, do I? What I am consenting. I just can't make it move. Oh, there we go. Right, it's moving now. Okay. Oh wow, this is in real time. Okay, so now I see that you are with. Oh no, you're not. Okay, I thought you were withdrawing, so I was going to withdraw. It's actually quite tricky, isn't it? I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't make.
Kissing is not easy, right?
It's not easy. No, I didn't know you had to do so much with your tongue. And then what if you then wanted to kind of seat? Oh, I've never been kissed like that, Daniel. Thank you. I'll return the favor. Where are we? Go. Whee! Come on. There we go. I'm getting your eyeball there. There you go. Lovely. So then I want to finish the kissing. I just stop.
You just stop and
they retreat.
Yeah. And this would be one of the games that we would play with the students in the school or digitally, remotely on the laptops to, have a fun way to communicate what consent is and how it works.
I think that's fantastic. I think that's something that even adults can get an education with. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for your time and for your consent and letting me lick your eyeball earlier. Is there any websites or social media or anything that you'd like to promote so people can see what you're up to?
I have Instagram, and you will be updated there about my projects. I just got funding for a mini film project that I'm working on about Eastern European migrants in Germany. So I'm looking forward. My Instagram is Daniel _, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Heinz 28.
Fabulous. Yeah, and we'll share that down below as well. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was mine.
Lovely. Again, thank you so much, Daniel, for that fantastic kissing experience. As I've said, I've never quite had something happen so romantically in my life. Now, well, of course, that was all fun and games, quite literally, but Daniel also picked up on some really important topics surrounding LGBTQ+ and other queer people in places like Germany that we think of as being very progressive, and we would like to hope that everyone is treated with the utmost respect and inclusion. However, as Daniel had mentioned, that's not necessarily always the case. And we thought that would be even better to dive into that a little bit deeper with a bit of a hot take on this hot topic. So I'm going to pass over to my favourite German Fräulein. I've been trying to say that all night. Fingers crossed I did it right. Eleanor, who's also in Germany, and she's going to try and give us she's not going to try, she's going to succeed in giving us a little rundown on some of the things that Daniel picked up on. Over to you, Eleanor.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks. So over the next few weeks during Hot Topic, we're going to be taking a trip across the world to investigate about the LGBTQ+ rights and life in different countries. And yes, that will include the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first, we're going to start with a worldwide organization. The United Nations, often called the UN, brings countries together to talk about and to try to agree on world issues. The UN has a clear start to its Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Under this declaration, the core principles of human rights defy the possibility of legally discriminating against LGBTQIA+ people. Of course, we know this not to be totally true in reality, as many countries have anti-LGBT legislation written into their laws. However, the UN calls on their 193 member states in 4 ways to safeguard LGBTQ+ people. Firstly, to protect against homophobic and transphobic violence, enact hate crime laws, and to recognise persecution for sexual orientation as a valid reason for asylum seeking. 2, to repeal all laws criminalising homosexuality and not allow individuals to be arrested on their gender identity or sexual orientation. Thirdly, prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, with an emphasis on education improving the situation. Finally, fourth, to safeguard the freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly for all LGBTQ+ people and to promote equality and diversity. Well, I think the In Out Pride is certainly doing that. On our trip around the world, we're going to start close to home in the Netherlands. We're kicking off with a very tolerant and progressive country, clearly shown when in 2001 they became the first country in the world to legalise same-sex marriages. The gay scene in their capital, Amsterdam, is one of the largest in Europe and boasts well over 100 gay and lesbian bars, clubs, saunas, shops and hotels, with some of the more risque establishments in the red light district. The city also has a monument consisting of 3 pink triangles called the Homo Monument for all past LGBTQ+ advocates. Adoption, legally changing gender, and enlisting in the military is all permitted in the Netherlands, while employment and in housing discrimination is illegal. A standout law in the Netherlands is that changing one's gender on official documents doesn't require surgery. Just jumping over one border, we're going to move into Germany. I think it's fair to say Germany was a little late to the party in comparison to their neighbours in the Netherlands. However, it's generally pretty similar now in 2021. Historically, there was obviously the great persecution of homosexual citizens under Nazi rule, which deeply scarred the community. But now there is a growing and thriving LGBTQ+ scene. Same-sex couples got marital and adoption rights in 2017. Discrimination protections on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity actually vary across Germany, but discrimination in employment and the provision of goods and services is banned nationwide. One definitely applaudable aspect of German law is in that May 2020, Germany became the 5th nation in the world to enact a nationwide ban on conversion therapy for minors. Next episode, we will be jumping across just one more border to Poland to examine how different LGBTQ+ laws can be. We hope you can join us for that one. But for now, it's back to Alex.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. That was very in-depth and very on brand as we were chatting a little bit about some of the issues facing Germany with Daniel earlier. Just to finish off with our caper conclusion, I'm going to invite Eleanor and the lovely Thomas as well, just to come on, and we'll each just have a wee kind of tidbit on what we considered some of the things that Daniel had brought up and that Eleanor brought up. So since I've been talking pure all night, I'll start with you, Eleanor. What were some reflections that you took from your own research and the things Daniel was chatting about earlier?
Yeah, the one thing I would say is that there is a bit of a difference between the lived experience and what's on Google. So on my presentation, of course, it's all factually correct. There's all the legal things, but there is often time for things to trickle down from the legal into societal change. So although, the laws may have changed, that doesn't mean people's opinions have necessarily changed.
Very astute. Yes, if I had a little mini applause machine there, I would give
Thank you.
Just a wee tiny one. Thomas, any other thoughts that you had with some of the things Daniel and Eleanor brought up?
No, I agree with actually Eleanor put that really beautifully there actually. But I guess just to say, I absolutely loved that game. Slightly switch gears here, but I absolutely loved that game. It was brilliant, and I just love it was just kind of it was quite weird, wasn't it? Like controlling
so difficult to actually control. Like you think kissing in real life is hard. Let me tell you. Digital kissing is worse.
Might help in long distance relationships.
Yes.
Maybe that's what we need to do in this age of lockdown where someone can't be with their partner. Yeah. Just let's jump on that game, babe. Let's just do that.
Well, I can give you a good idea of what to expect when, you know, people aren't contagious anymore, I suppose. It would certainly be a lot easier, you know, to work out your technique and a lot easier to practice. Maybe not like in Starbucks, you know, don't use their Wi-Fi for it. Maybe, you know, get a wee vibe. Well, thank you so much to Tommy and Eleanor for your reflections there, and thank you so much to everyone watching. Thank you so much to Daniel for joining us. Really enjoyed having you, and of course, big thank you to our funders, the Corra Foundation, who have allowed us to continue on the In Out Crowd in the new year. If you were affected by any of the things that any of us or Daniel had brought up, of course, there are plenty of places you can go to get help, support and advice. For young people based in Scotland, www.lgbtyouth.org.uk give you some really great advice, and they can also point you in the right direction. For age 18 plus people in Scotland, you can visit pinksaltire.com. They have a free counselling service for queer people based in Fife, and there is also, if you type into Google LGBTQ plus Help and Support Scotland, there is a number of different helplines and websites that you can visit, and of course we will link them below as well once the video is finished. But safe to say that for now